I'm Jeremy Sampson, Chief Executive Officer of the Travel Foundation, and I'm really excited about our new offer, Insight Bites, and our new special advisor, Caroline Bremner, who's here to work through the very first Insight Bite with us. Insight Bites aim to cut through the noise to focus on the most impactful insights for travel businesses and destinations. And Caroline, welcome to the team. You recently joined us as a special advisor. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
With your background in tourism research, which I know is something that you're going to continue to bring to the table in your new role here with us at TF, just wondering what's on your radar that aligns with our top three trends, which are growth, climate, and inequity.
Well, that's a great question. Beginning the new year, what we can see is that there is record-breaking growth for travel and tourism. So the big trend of this year, and it aligns very much with the Travel Foundation agenda, is growth, growth, and more growth. But the big question is, at what cost? So if we unpack this and look at this in more detail, first of all, we see the global economy growing at 3.3%. That's brand new data from the International Monetary Fund. Then if we turn and look at global air passengers carried, what we can see is that that's growing at 5.2% per year. And you can see that actually that is even at a faster rate of growth than the global economy. And why is that? Because travel is highly aspirational for consumers. But of course, when you have air passenger kilometers growing at 5.2%, and then you start looking at, well, what's happening with air carbon emissions, that's where the worrying story starts to really reveal itself. And we can see that air emissions, according to the global carbon budget, are growing at 6.8%. So that IATA data is 5.2%, and then we have 6.8% for carbon emissions. So there's clearly a big disconnect. And, this is a worrying indicator for us. Then you start looking at the price of oil, and oil prices are actually dropping. So this is quite an alarming situation that we find ourselves in.
Why is it that we're seeing even higher emissions than passengers carried, would you say?
I would say this is because of the recovery in business travel, premium economy, first class, where we know that the air passengers' emissions are even higher per seat. Equally, we're seeing, unprecedented recovery, record-breaking levels of travel and tourism, and this is very much being driven by emerging markets such as Asia Pacific. So, of course, the distances traveled in Asia Pac are even further than they say are in Europe, which is a very large source of outbound tourism demand. So it's that sort of the post-pandemic boom, and it just seems to be moderating slightly, but still the growth is astonishing.
Caroline, how are we ever going to decarbonize at a rate of 20% per year to meet the Paris Agreement targets? It's feeling increasingly unreachable.
I mean that essentially is just the challenge that we all face is how do we deal with the 2030 and the 2050 agendas, where we do need to decarbonize at a very fast rate, and equally we need to reach net zero by 2050. It is concerning that when you look at the sheer small volume of sustainable aviation fuel, which is meant to be the silver bullet, is only 0.6% of global fuel supplies. And then that you look at the cost of sustainable aviation fuel, and it's 3.7 times more expensive. So we really are in a very difficult situation when it comes to reaching those targets.
I guess the question is, what is it that businesses and destinations can do in the meantime while aviation and governments are playing the blame game with one another? At the Travel Foundation, one clear option is to sign the Glasgow Declaration and start your decarbonization journey with the concrete actions. businesses and destinations really must consider that the only viable scenario outlined in our Envision 2030 report, which is to reduce the dependency that the industry has on long haul travel, essentially to create new growth pathways and new growth recipes. Because I don't believe that we have to look at this as a degrowth versus growth scenario. I think there are new ways to grow and new recipes that can achieve perhaps quite the same, if not better, net impact on places. But we do need to reduce long haul travel, business travel, and first class air travel in order to really help accelerate the decarbonization of air transport, which is by far and away the sector's largest emissions accountability, accounting for almost 50% of total emissions across travel and tourism. So I don't see any pathway through which we're going to achieve anything close to those targets without making some serious dents in the way that we travel and how far it is that we travel. Caroline, I think it's really great if we can end our insight bite, and hopefully this will become a really nice pattern for everyone. If we could just try to summarize in one sentence, if I'm a stakeholder listening to this insight bite, and I want to go tell something to my CEO that's going to get his or her attention, what's that one line that I can use to translate everything we've said today to a busy C-suite executive in order to make sure that they're getting this information as well?
Well, as we saw, there is a massive disconnect. But the good news is that the technologies that we need to decarbonize at such a rapid pace are already here. And so Professor Stefan Gosling released some very interesting research recently saying that the technologies are already here. So the time is now for action. There's no reason to delay. That would be my message to your CEO.
Mm-hmm. Great, and I think I would also focus in my one sentence on the idea that growth is still possible, but perhaps we might need to shift the recipe, looking at how we create that long-term ROI for our business, utilizing different audiences and different segments, but it doesn't always need to be a zero-sum game. Well, thank you, Caroline. It's been a great pleasure to do this insight bite with you, and I'm really glad to have you as part of our team and advising us on these key data issues. Look for more from Caroline and from our insight bite series as we go forward in the coming months. Thank you.